they first came to film us, it was Frank and I that they cut the deal with, and they were like, who is she? What is she doing here? And I said, well, she works for me. And they were like, well, there's no deal with her. We're not filming her.
For over a decade, they traveled the back roads of America, turning rust into riches. American pickers became a cultural phenomenon. But behind the treasures and finds lay a complex human story of friendship, business, and eventual separation. American Pickers, the real story. In 2010, History Channel debuted what would become one of its most successful shows. The premise was simple. Two longtime friends from Iowa traveling across the country's forgotten barns and dusty outbuildings, searching for rusty gold. I'm Mike Wolf. And I'm Frank Fritz. And we're pickers. The concept had been Mike Wolf's dream for years. A lifelong collector who had been picking since he was a child, Mike had pitched the show concept to networks for nearly 5 years before History Channel took a chance on it. Mike was born in Joliet, Illinois, but raised in Bettendorf, Iowa, where he developed his passion for finding treasures in other people's trash. Even as a child, he would salvage discarded items from his neighbor's garbage, beginning with old bicycles he would restore and sell. Frank Fritz had a similar background. Born and raised in Davenport, Iowa, he worked as a fire inspector before committing to picking full-time. His collecting began with rocks and beer cans as a child, eventually evolving into an interest in toys and vintage motorcycles. The two men met in junior high school and bonded over their shared interest in old things and the stories behind them. Before the show, Mike had already established Antique Archaeology, his shop in LeClaire, Iowa. Frank was running Frank Fritz Finds, focusing especially on vintage toys and items with motors. Their friendship was built on complementary interests and a mutual respect for history and craftsmanship. But American Pickers wasn't just about Mike and Frank. The third essential component was Danielle Colby, who ran the home base, Antique Archaeology in LeClaire, Iowa. Mike met Danielle at a garage sale where she was selling vintage clothing. Impressed by her knowledge and personality, he knew she would be perfect for the show. These guys would be lost without me. I'm the one finding the leads, handling the business while they're on the road. Danielle was born in Davenport, Iowa, and brought a unique energy to the show. A mother of two, she balanced her work at Antique Archaeology with her passion for burlesque performance, vintage fashion, and her own creative projects. Her distinctive tattooed appearance and straightforward manner made her an instant fan favorite. The chemistry between the three was undeniable. Mike was the visionary with an eye for potential and history. Frank was the detail man, particularly drawn to toys, oil cans, and anything with motors. And Danielle was the organized force that kept the operation running. The show's development wasn't without challenges. Initial filming began in 2009, with the team investing their own money and resources into creating a pilot. The concept had been rejected by multiple networks before History Channel recognized its potential. The first season was shot on a minimal budget, with the team staying in budget motels and eating at diners as they crossed the country. American Pickers quickly became a ratings powerhouse, drawing millions of viewers each week. The show transformed all three main cast members into unlikely celebrities. By its second season, it was averaging 5.3 million viewers per episode, making it one of the highest-rated non-fiction series on cable television. The formula seemed perfect. Mike and Frank would travel in their white Sprinter van, following leads provided by Danielle, surprising property owners with their interest in items often considered junk. Their genuine enthusiasm for history and preservation resonated with viewers. Their approach was distinctive. Unlike formal antique dealers, Mike and Frank embraced the dusty, rusty, and forgotten. They would literally dig through piles in barns, basements, and outbuildings, explaining the historical significance of items as they went. This educational component, combined with the treasure hunt aspect and the colorful characters they met along the way, created a winning combination. Mike often spoke of telling America's story through the things we collect. This wasn't just about buying and selling, it was about preservation and appreciation of craftsmanship from bygone eras. These items represent the working class of America, the people who built this country, Mike would often say when finding industrial artifacts. The early seasons showcased not just the finds, but the deep friendship between Mike and Frank. They spent countless hours together on the road, sharing motel rooms, meals, and the excitement of the hunt. Their banter and good-natured ribbing of each other became a hallmark of the show. Frank, who suffered from Crohn's disease, occasionally discussed his health challenges on the show, offering visibility to a condition many Americans struggle with. Some days are better than others, he would explain during flare-ups. But the road and the next pick always keep me going. For years, the show continued with great success. Antique archaeology expanded to a second location in Nashville. Merchandise sales boomed. The stars made appearances on talk shows and became household names. They published books about picking and the stories behind their most memorable finds. American Picker's Guide to Picking became a bestseller, with Mike and Frank sharing their expertise with fans eager to try their hand at the picking lifestyle. The show's success also spawned international versions in Canada, Australia, and the UK. Fans would travel to LeClaire, Iowa, turning the small Mississippi River town into a tourist destination. On busy days, hundreds of visitors would stream through antique archaeology, hoping to catch a glimpse of the stars or purchase a piece of memorabilia. But behind the scenes, cracks were beginning to form in the foundation. The grueling shooting schedule took its toll. Typically, they would shoot for 10 days straight, return home for 5, then head back out. This meant Mike and Frank were on the road for 170 to 180 days each year, away from family and other interests. The first public signs of trouble came when Frank Fritz disappeared from the show in March 2020. Initially explained as a health issue related to his Crohn's disease, which Frank had battled for years, his absence stretched on without clear explanation. Fans speculated about what had happened, with many assuming he would eventually return. During this period, Mike's brother Robbie began appearing more frequently on the show, filling the void left by Frank's absence. While Robbie was knowledgeable and personable, viewers noticed the different dynamic. The brotherly chemistry was different from the long-term friendship that had been at the heart of the show. In July 2021, Mike Wolfe made a public statement that shocked many fans. Frank would not be returning to American Pickers. "I have known Frank for as long as I can remember. He's been like a brother to me. The journey that Frank and I started back in 2009, like all of life, has come with its highs and lows, blessings and challenges, but it has also been the most rewarding. I will miss Frank, just like all of you, and I pray for the very best and all good things for him on the next part of his journey." The separation revealed deeper issues. In interviews, Fritz spoke about feeling like he was in Wolfe's shadow on the show. He mentioned they hadn't spoken in 2 years despite being co-stars. Frank also revealed he had entered rehab for alcohol abuse following a difficult breakup and concerns about his health. "I haven't talked to Mike in 2 years. He knew my back was messed up, but he didn't call me up and ask how I was doing. That's just how it is." Frank also expressed resentment about what he perceived as unequal treatment on the show, suggesting that Mike received more prominent billing and attention. "I can't even bend over anymore," Frank told the press, referring to back surgery he had undergone. The physical demands of picking had taken a serious toll on his body. Fans took sides in the dispute, with hashtags like #TeamFrank and #TeamMike appearing on social media. The show's Facebook page was flooded with comments from viewers expressing disappointment about Frank's departure and concern about his well-being. The show continued with Mike as the sole lead picker, often joined by his brother, Robbie Wolfe. Danielle remained at Antique Archaeology, providing continuity for viewers. The format evolved slightly, with more emphasis on the stories behind the items and the people who owned them. In July 2022, devastating news emerged about Frank Fritz. He had suffered a stroke and was hospitalized. Despite their estrangement, Mike asked fans for prayers. "I have been very private in the past year in regards to Frank's life and the journey he's been on. There has been lots of opinions in regards to mine and Frank's friendship in the show, but now is not the time to set the record straight. Now is the time to pray for my friend." This public support for Frank showed that despite their professional differences, there remained a deep connection between the two men who had shared so much of their lives together. Fans responded with an outpouring of support for Frank, sending thousands of well wishes to the hospital. Danielle Colby also expressed support for Frank during this difficult time, while maintaining her close friendship with Mike. She had previously spoken about the complexity of the situation, suggesting that there were aspects of the story that viewers weren't privy to. "Frank caused so much pain for himself that it has been hard to watch. I truly hope Frank receives all the help he needs to become well after his stroke. I'm keeping Frank in my thoughts and prayers." Frank's recovery became a long, challenging process. He had to adapt to significant changes to his mobility and health. Reports emerged that he was under temporary guardianship due to his inability to make decisions for himself following the stroke. His longtime friend filed for the guardianship to ensure Frank's needs were being met during his recovery. The health crisis put the earlier disputes into perspective. Some friends suggested that if Frank recovered sufficiently, a reconciliation with Mike might be possible. Fans continued to hope for a reunion of the original picking team. Meanwhile, American Pickers continued, evolving with new dynamics. Robbie Wolf became a more permanent fixture, and other guest pickers occasionally joined Mike on the road. The core of the show remained the same, the thrill of the find and the stories behind America's forgotten treasures. Danielle expanded her own projects, including burlesque performing and her passion for vintage clothing preservation. She launched her own business focused on vintage lingerie and clothing, and became an advocate for humanitarian causes, particularly in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. Her social media following grew as she shared her artistic endeavors and advocacy work. The loyal fan base remained divided. Some embraced the show's new direction, while others expressed that without the original trio intact, something essential was missing. Ratings fluctuated but remained strong enough for History Channel to continue renewing the series. In interviews, Mike reflected on the show's evolution. Change is inevitable in any long-running series. What remains constant is our love for the history behind these objects and the people who preserve them. Every pick tells a story about America. For his part, as his health permitted, Frank occasionally shared updates with fans through friends or limited public statements. He expressed gratitude for the support he received during his recovery and reflected on his time with American Pickers fondly, despite the difficulties at the end. The American Pickers story reveals how success, friendship, business, and personal challenges can create a complex web that's difficult to untangle. What began as a simple show about finding treasures in America's forgotten spaces became a human story about relationships, health struggles, fame's impact, and the inevitable changes that come with time. Through it all, the legacy of what they built together remains significant. They introduced millions to the world of picking, preservation, and appreciation of America's material history. They showed that value exists in what others might overlook, and that every object has a story to tell. The show created a renewed interest in picking as both a hobby and profession. Countless viewers were inspired to explore flea markets, estate sales, and rural properties with a new eye for historic value. The ripple effect extended to preservation movements, with more people recognizing the importance of saving artifacts from America's industrial and cultural past. "We didn't invent picking," Mike would often say. "People have been doing this for centuries. We just shined a light on it and showed why it matters." The educational impact of the show was substantial. Viewers learned about the evolution of advertising, transportation, manufacturing, and everyday life through the items Mike and Frank discovered. Teachers reported using clips from the show in history classrooms to spark student interest in different historical periods. As Mike often said on the show, "One man's junk is another man's treasure." Perhaps the same could be said for the complicated, very human story behind American Pickers itself. A mix of treasured memories and difficult moments that, together, tell a uniquely American tale of success, friendship, and ultimate separation. For Danielle Colby, the journey continues with American Pickers, but also through her own evolution as an artist, performer, and preservationist in her own right. Her resilience through the show's changes demonstrates her adaptability and commitment to her passions. "I've always been someone who embraces change," she noted in a 2022 interview. "Life is about evolution, and I'm grateful for every chapter." Mike Wolf has expanded his interests beyond the show as well. He's become an advocate for small-town revitalization, purchasing and restoring properties in LeClaire, Iowa, and Columbia, Tennessee. He's spoken about how picking isn't just about the items, but about preserving the stories and heritage of American small towns that are disappearing. "When we lose these small towns, we lose a piece of who we are as Americans," Mike has said. "The buildings, the main streets, the local businesses, they all tell our collective story." His Two Lanes brand and travel guides encourage people to get off the highways and explore the backroads where American history lives on. As for the future, American Pickers continues to evolve. The roads traveled now may be different, but the search for America's hidden treasures and the stories they tell goes on. And somewhere, in a quieter life away from the cameras, Frank Fritz works on his health and reflects on the incredible journey that transformed a simple Iowa picker into a household name. Looking back on the American pickers phenomenon, it's clear that what resonated most with audiences wasn't just the items being discovered, but the humanity of the people involved. Viewers connected with Mike's enthusiasm, Frank's dry humor, and Danielle's straightforward charm. They saw themselves in the collectors being visited, people passionate about preserving pieces of history, often for deeply personal reasons. The show succeeded because it was never really about the monetary value of the finds. It was about the stories, the connections, and the shared American experience reflected in our material culture. From old motorcycles to vintage signs, carnival items to farm equipment, each object represented a moment in time and the people who lived it. The story of American pickers reminds us that behind every successful television show are real people with real struggles, triumphs, and complicated relationships. In the end, perhaps that human element is the most valuable artifact of all. From small-town Iowa to national fame, from close friendship to public separation, from health and vitality to serious medical challenges, the American picker's story contains all the elements of the American experience itself. Aspiration, success, conflict, resilience, and the ongoing search for meaning in the things we collect and the relationships we build along the way. As they often discovered during their picks, the most weathered exteriors often conceal the most valuable treasures. Similarly, the public facade of television success often hides more complicated human truths. What remains, however, is the undeniable impact they made together, preserving pieces of American history that might otherwise have been lost to time, and inspiring millions to see the value in what others had discarded. In that sense, regardless of how their personal story evolved, the legacy of Mike, Frank, and Danielle endures in the countless barns, attics, and collections that remain preserved because they showed America the value of its own forgotten history. Like the vintage items they rescued, their story continues to resonate because it reflects something authentic and real: the complex, imperfect, yet invaluable nature of human connection, preserved for others to discover and appreciate long after the original moment has passed. Ultimately, the true story of American pickers isn't found in the items they bought and sold, but in how three ordinary people from Iowa showed America its own reflection in the things it had left behind. And in doing so, they became an indelible part of the very American story they had set out to tell. For Mike, Frank, and Danielle, the journey began in dusty barns and cluttered garages, but it led to television screens across America and beyond. Though their paths eventually diverged, their combined legacy as cultural archaeologists of America's material history remains intact. Together, they changed how millions of people view old stuff, helping us all see that sometimes the most valuable treasures are hiding in plain sight. As they uncovered America's forgotten relics, they inadvertently revealed something more valuable: the power of passion, knowledge, and authentic human connection. In a world increasingly dominated by digital experiences, they championed the tangible, the tactile, and the stories embedded in physical objects that connect us to our shared past. Whatever the future holds for each of them individually, the American pickers phenomenon they created together continues to inspire a new generation of collectors, preservationists, and everyday people to look more closely at the objects around them, and to recognize that everything and everyone has a story worth telling.